Hello and welcome to this week's edition of WCS Sports Connection. It's championship week. I'm your co-host, Jeremy Qualls, and with me as always is Tate Mathews. Tate, it is state championship week. Independence Eagles flying high into the state championship game. Let's talk about that in just a second. We're going to kind of round up what else is going on in sports in the WCS Sports Conference. Basketball, football, wrestling, bowling, all completely underway. Nolensville High School, this is something to note. Nolensville High School boys right now sitting at 4-1. Girls have gotten their first ever win as well. Basketball, like I said, is in full bounce mode going all the way through to Thanksgiving break. They had plenty of teams going off and playing in Thanksgiving tournaments, and it looks to be shaping up like what we thought. It's going to be a dog fight for those first, 1 through 5 spots in the WCS Sports Conference.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. It'll be as fun as it was in football. And, I think there's some preconceived favorites maybe going into the year, but I'm not so sure that this isn't going to be as, especially on the boys' side, I think it's going to be as tough as a race as we've seen in a while. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Nolensville off to a great start. And Page girls, look out for the Page girls. I think they're going to make some noise this year as well.
Absolutely, and let's not fail to mention that we always forget, or sometimes forget, that the Nolensville team's playing with freshmen and sophomores right now, so the future's bright for those guys
Now,
as well.
so those that don't know, that have been watching, they're playing a varsity schedule.
That's correct. They're not like the football where they were playing JV, the best JV team in the country.
Number one JV team in the
country. But the basketball team is actually playing a varsity schedule, and right now to have 4 wins this early in the season is pretty impressive on them. But I look forward to some of these huge matchups coming right now. Elon Smallwood for Ravenwood High School is averaging roughly 30 points a game right now. Battle of the Woods are going to look to be phenomenal. Brentwood's playing really good. Coach Greg Shirley and his bunch going up to Chicago, getting a couple big wins up there, up in Illinois. You've got also the Southern Border Battle, man. You're talking about going to be awesome.
It's going to be
Independence and Summit right now. Of course, Independence has a couple of their guys in football. Won't get those guys back until after this week is over, regardless of what happens. Summit looking to be vying for that top spot, as well as Indy, as well as Ravenwood, as well as Brentwood. So the parity of this year in the conference is pretty good.
Without a doubt. And then when you mention wrestling or wrestling, depending on how you want to call it, we got some really good teams in that too. So it's going to be fun. Going to be a fun winter.
No, Coach Grindstaff at Independence is looking to go back and taking his team back to the duels this year. Be interesting to see how that plays out. Brentwood Cross Country still running, Tate. I know that the cross country season ended for the TWAA and the state championship a couple of weeks ago. Nike Southeast finals were this week. There were 16 state championship teams there and state champions. Brody Hasty beats them all, and the Brentwood cross country team breaks the record for the meet and wins the meet with 66 points.
Unbelievable. Dominating.
So with that win, they now have qualified for the national tournament happening this week in Oregon. So there is an outside chance, and I think it's a pretty good chance, that Brody Hasty can come away as the national champion and the Brentwood Bruins be also national champions.
That'd be a heck of an accomplishment. I think they got a good chance. You're right. And you think about there's schools out there that have 3,000, 4,000 students. I don't know what Brentwood High has. 1,500?
I think it's around 1,700.
1,700. And they've got 3 of the top runners or 4 of the top runners in the entire country. That's amazing.
Well, they put 4, or excuse me, I think they put 6 on the podium at this invitational. So right now their kids, the Vroom brothers, right now going to Belmont. They are in the top of the heat. Of course, Brody right now has not signed with anybody, but he beat the top runner in the country. He has the fastest time. The top runner in the country right now is committed and going to Stanford. So I think that Brody Hasty will probably have his pick of any school that he wants to go to. I asked Coach Siegenthaler and some of those guys about Brody, and he says he just likes to run. He doesn't even pay attention to the schools or what's happening. He just likes to run, and that he is very good at.
He'll end up somewhere good.
All right, now, football. Let's go back. This is our first show in 2 weeks. Let's go back to the quarterfinals and the opportunity to get into the semifinals, which was played this past week over Thanksgiving break. We had 5 teams left in the WCS Sports Conference in the TWAA playoffs. In Centennial, Brentwood having to face off against each other for that one shot to get into the semifinals to play the winner of the Indy Cane Ridge game. And Brentwood comes away with a thriller, 24-21 on a Tucker Day, huge field goal.
Yeah, it's one of those where you're excited to see both of them in it, but you hate that they one of them's going to have to go home because both of them played great. Came down to a field goal, and that's something that we talk about whenever you have give Coach Crawford a second chance to play you. He's been doing it so long. He's so good at what he does, and the game plan. He had a great game plan. He mentioned it the first time. I know we talked about it on the show. He felt like they were completely dominated on the offensive and defensive lines of scrimmage. And physically throughout the whole game. They were missing 2 of their tackles the first time we played. None of that's an excuse, just the way it was at that time. And so when they played them again, you knew that Brentwood felt like they had a chance to have a better showing, and they knew that they were going to have to correct that, and obviously they did. But Centennial played a very good game as well. They did what their recipe for success all year long, that was running the ball and playing good defense. Just they ran up against a Brentwood team that was better. They got a different look. You never know. Shacklett was hurt and out, so they come in with Caden Dreyer, and sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes it's not a good thing, but it looked like that ended up being an advantage for them. They didn't really know what they were going to do, and he came out. He played lights out.
Well, Caden Dreyer is an underclassman as well as Shacklett. I mean, this is going to be interesting how we go into the next season, in the off season, going into next year to see who wins that quarterback battle. What do we come back? Are you going to come back with a 2-quarterback system? Let me tell you, Caden Dreyer right now reminds me a lot of a Tim Tebow-esque style quarterback, Andrew Rapay from the Ravenwood 6A state championship team. He is a big guy. He's a tank. He's about 6'1", 6'2", 220-plus pounds. Very mobile for a guy that big, and he will pound the ball, and he's not afraid to hit anybody. Has a good, adequate arm as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Now, let's talk about the weapon that Brentwood has in Tucker Day. He kicks a punt late in the game that has enough hang time that the kid from Centennial, the receiver from Centennial, drops the ball. And they had already covered it so well because of the hang time that they pick it up and take over the ball on about the 3 or 4 yard line that sets up one of the scores for Brentwood.
Yeah, I mean, he's, like you've mentioned on the show before, he's the #1 punter in the country, and he's that for a reason. And he does. He negates the return game.
Let's talk about, I mean, you got to understand, most high school punters, whoever's stuck back there, if you will, because you can kick the ball the furthest, on a punt like that, you could either drop it, have enough time to scoop it up, and still pick it up and retain possession. However, when he kicks the ball, the hang time on this thing is in the 4 or 5 second range. It gives the time for the entire team to cover this, so when the guy does catch it, if he fair catches it, they're there. If he does not, he drops it, you can pick it up.
And that's pressure on that return guy, too. We're talking about a 16, 17, maybe 18-year-old kid. And it's all cliche, but it's true. It's not only does it take away the return game, but it flips the field every single time. And so you're having to drive the length of the field almost every single time after one of his punts. And Coach Crawford was talking a couple of weeks ago on the radio, and I think they had played 13 games. Now he's doing kickoff duty and punt, and I think he said that there had only been 8, maybe it was 9 times in 13 games that the team had to cover, that the kick coverage teams had to actually cover a kick. Now that's
and
amazing.
on kickoffs, you got to think they're averaging 30-plus points a game.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, it's out of a lot of kicks, and so it's just a heck of a weapon. And then, that's not even to mention what a weapon he is kicking field goals. I mean, and I know we're going to get to it, but both these last 2 games they've been with, the opposing coach has had to sit there and in their game plan, in their mindset, they got to think, hey, they get this thing past the 40, and there's a very real chance of them making this field goal. So, great weapon and great player, and so congratulations to him.
Well, the thing on the Centennial game, something that we've been talking about all year long, Zion Lee, 24 rushing attempts for 118 yards. Jariel Wilson, 13 attempts for 102 yards. Those 2 guys have been steady for Coach Kreisky all year long. Even though they came up short, those 2 guys have been consistent for Centennial and the Cougars. And you cannot say enough about the job that Coach Kreisky has done this year. They finished at 11-2. They literally come up 3 points short of getting into the state semi game and being 12-1 into that game and tying the all-time school record.
Well, and that's how far Brentwood's come. I mean, at the beginning of the game, or the beginning of the week, if I had told you that Zion Lee was going to go for 118 and Jariel was going to go for 102, and they both have, and they have 3 total touchdowns between them, you'd have probably said Centennial's going to win the game, right? I mean, that's that's what they do, and that's how they've won 12 games before that. So, or 11 games before that, and that's just how far this Brentwood High team has come. And it's amazing to sit there and think at the beginning of the year they were sitting there at 1-3. Now they had lost to Independence, they had lost to Franklin. The Rossview game was one that they wish they had back. But sometimes you need something like that. You know, you never know how that's going to go. Obviously, that was something they could rally around, and Brent was just a really quality football team right now. And, you know, obviously, the way they were playing in the playoffs, one of the top teams in 5A.
Well, you're right. I mean, Brentwood, the job that they did, Coach Crawford circled the wagons, get themselves in this game. The job that Kreisky has done at Centennial. I mean, we talk about this all the time. We talk about it off the air. We talk about it on the air. I truly mean this. The coaching efforts that we have from top to bottom, from Brentwood all the way down to Ravenwood and Summit, our last alphabetical order, our coaching staffs have really done a phenomenal job this year. All teams being in, 7 of the 8 winning and advancing. It's really remarkable of what they do night in, night out, week in and week out, every year.
Oh yeah, and they've got great staffs too, and so and trust me, the surrounding counties, the rest of the state, people are noticing. They know. I mean, it's from top to bottom, just top shelf coaching.
So Brentwood advances on a Tucker Day last-second field goal from very deep that hit about 3/4 of the way up. That could have been good from 67 out. I think it was roughly 50.
I think it was 55.
55 yards. Not a whole lot of people in high school
can
do that.
Hey, we watch college football every day. The Ohio State kicker, he started off the game 0-2, and those were chip shots. So not a lot of people on Saturdays hitting that.
That's right. So they advanced with a score of 24-21. Indy Cane Ridge to set up the other side of that semifinal. What a game this was. I'm just going to tell you, I never leave a football game. I went to Cane Ridge, and, great atmosphere, big crowd. They thought they had the recipe to slay the dragon, if you will. Indy coming in on a 27-game winning streak, looking for number 28. Indy takes the lead 49-19. Early in the third quarter, this game kind of went back and forth. In the first quarter, it was a slow start for Indy, 7-7. I think was the end of the score, and then they exploded right before halftime, got the ball back at half, scored to go up 49-19. That's a long haul from Centerville. I told Coach Glass, I was like, Coach, I think we got this one in the bag, and I'm leaving. Unbeknownst to me, I get down the road, 4 or 5 miles, I get a phone call from Will Hester. Coach Hester's like, are you at this ball game? I'm like, I was. He's like, you might want to turn around and go back. As you know, Cane Ridge came roaring back. And, I mean, Indy did all they could do to hang on, 49-46.
Yeah, and Cane Ridge was undefeated. Okay, so they're in the quarterfinals. They're undefeated. They're not undefeated for a reason. They got a good football team. And then also with Independence. I mean, this thing now, when you get up into 27, 28, 26 wins in a row, that's tough. Like Coach Blades said, every time I see an article right now, he's talking about how they're getting everybody's best shot, and they are. And so Cane Ridge is a good football team. I was not surprised Independence won. I was surprised they jumped up on them that big. But that just goes to show where this game is. If you've got a quarterback that can run and pass, an athletic quarterback, which Cane Ridge does in DJ Thorpe, you're never out of a game. And really, that's what I saw him do it against Hendersonville earlier in the year. Obviously, Independence is a better football team than them, but they can spread it out, and they got a guy who can make plays with both his arm and his feet, and that's what that kid did. He kind of took over, and luckily Independence was able to outscore them. But that's a really good football team, and again, you don't lose sight of, man. That was 27 in a row, 28 in a row. I mean, there's going to be bad games, and so these are against quality football teams. So.
And they're getting everybody's Super Bowl. I mean, everybody wants to stop the streak. Everybody wants to slay the dragon. Everybody wants to do all those things, And here comes a team in Cane Ridge, had gone undefeated in the regular season and won up to this point, and they really thought they had a team that could beat them, and they showed that with the comeback. Now, literally, this thing could have been running clock, 60-plus points to 19.
And it was close to being that, right?
And it was. It was literally one more stop and another score, and this thing would have been over with. But they didn't. They didn't do that. Cane Ridge hung in there. The adage is the Metro teams, usually when you get down like that, they kind of just quit on you. This team never quit. They stayed in there the whole time. They kept thinking, hey, we've got a shot. They come roaring back, and literally, if they had another minute or two, they might would have won this thing. But they didn't. The good teams always get the breaks. The good teams always have the lucky bounces when things are going well for them. And Indy survives 49-46 to advance. That's their 28th in a row to set up the big matchup between Brentwood in the 5A semifinals. Ravenwood in the 6A side in the quarterfinals go to Cordova. Cordova had one loss on the year. That was to Whitehaven. And just came up short, 42-16. It just didn't go their way. The game was a little closer than what the score indicated. I think those scores came later in the game. But the Ravenwood season ends. They finished 7-6. They could have been dead in the water too. I mean, there's a lot of times they had to fight from behind to get themselves to 500, to get themselves in the playoffs. Everybody kind of wrote them off, and the Raptors are not going to make any noise. They get themselves in the quarterfinals, but come up a little short.
Yeah, and a couple things. Obviously, Cordova was better, and Whitehaven were better than I thought they were going to be coming out of West Tennessee. But we talked about this starting about week 7, week 8. Ravenwood started turning that thing a little bit, and we felt like, hey, they're gonna get in the playoffs and win at least one playoff game, probably two, and that just goes to show the quality of the schedule that they played during the regular season, and then also, they had some things that they had to figure out. Got a new coach, entirely new staff. They got a new quarterback, and they kind of had to feel each other out. But by the end of the year, they were playing some really good football, and you can't. You hate the way that it ended, but the first round and the second round victory over Mount Juliet was big. And Cordova obviously is better than what we thought coming out of West Tennessee. Only loss was to Whitehaven, who we found out Whitehaven's a pretty dang good football team.
Well, I mean, can you go back and think, when's the last time we've had an all-Memphis final to get into that particular game, into the state championship game? And we both felt pretty confident that Ravenwood was going to win this game.
Yes.
We knew that Franklin had a tall task. We knew that Whitehaven was going to be extremely athletic, undefeated coming in. But we felt pretty confident that Ravenwood would win this game and possibly have another all-WCS showdown there for the state championship game. But it's just –
And it was the second week. Again, no excuses. Second week in a row to have to go to Memphis. That's tough to do now. That's a tough trip.
Absolutely. And Dr. Defense, Donnie Wilbin said, with the Rebels, had to pack up and as well go to Whitehaven. Well, they lost 35-14. This game also getting beat by 21 is not, an indication of what that game really went like. It was pretty close going into the half, and then they kind of pulled away at the end. Whitehaven, obviously extremely talented and has a shot, to go against Oakland in the 6A state championship game, which there's athletes abound in that
Yes.
game. So it should be interesting to see that.
Well, and they've got something that you can't coach, and it's really, really hard to prepare for, and that's speed. Whitehaven's got speed, and one thing, Coach Salisbury's been there for a long time now, and that's a program that he's got there, and they know what they're going to do, and he coaches them. They play physical football, and they can run, and so that's probably the first time where people could load up the box against Franklin and put some guys on the outside and cover them, with just a couple of players. And when you do that, that's really tough. And on top of that, they can run and they're physical. So they were better than what I thought. I thought Franklin was going to be able to go out there and get them, but Whitehaven's a good football team. And anytime you're in the quarterfinals of the 6A bracket, you've had a very nice season.
Well, we finish with 5 teams in the quarterfinals. It's the most we've ever had. We got whittled down to 2, which was the same in match as what we had last year in the semis. Of course, one was on the 6A, one was on the 5A. So, unfortunately, both these teams were on the 5A level. So, somebody had to go home. We were guaranteed a spot in the state championship game, but somebody was going to have to go home. These are the games that I truly hate from my position. I love seeing these guys advance. At the end of the day, when smoke clears, we know that only one can be standing, and it comes down to this game. Brentwood, Independence, in the state semis of the 5A, and what a game this was, Tate. Unbelievable atmosphere over Thanksgiving break. You think everybody was going to be gone. Man, they were there. Indy Nation, Brentwood High, both sides were completely packed. Independence wins a comeback thriller, 27-24. And I'm going to tell you, Brentwood pretty much dominated. When I say dominated, they controlled this game for 3.5 quarters.
Yeah, you hate to see one of them lose. So many great storylines that come out of it, and here you are in the semifinals. Supposedly we're down to the 4 best teams in the state in that division, and so for it to come down to 3 points and both of them have a shot to win at the end of the game, that's what you want to see. So a lot of things that came out of it, starting on the independent side. Again, the pressure of that thing now. I mean, it's easy for us to talk about it, but when you're out there and thinking, man, is this the night? We got one more to get back to our second straight chance for a state championship. Is tonight going to be the night? And you could have panicked, but they had to be patient. They were in a hole, 21-7 or 21-7 at halftime, and then they get the Tucker Day field goal. So, but knowing we can dig out of this, but here's what we're going to have to do. Sounds to me like Brentwood was making sure if they're going to beat us, it's not going to be by the big play, so they had to earn it with drives. And not that Brandon Hines played poorly in the first half, because he didn't, but there were some things that they were doing, maybe disrupting the rhythmic passing offense that they got. But to come back out and he finishes with 269 yards and 2 touchdowns in the second half, man, tough kid. Hats off to him.
Well, you know that we have the usual suspects, if you will, on offense for them, the skill players. You've got Sheffield, Scurry, you've got Landon Gidtree out there. You've got so many weapons, okay? And finally, I think what they figured out, you could hear the secondary of Brentwood watch for the digs. They were so prepared for what was going on. They were watching the bubble passes, the little small outs. They made sure on the wheel route that nobody bit on that and stayed at home defensively in the backs. But then they started figuring out, or Independence figured out, okay, we're going to start beating you with your own medicine. Let's get Troy Henderson involved on those running plays, the delayed draws, if you will. And it was pretty interesting to watch, man. This kid, he can flat out play. Yeah. He made an NFL type player, if you will, late in the game that really kind of bit him just a little bit. He hurdled a player, and I did not know this. I don't know if you know this as well. Is that if you do that at the high school level, it's a 15-yard penalty.
I did, and I don't like it.
He made an unbelievable play. I mean, he went right, spun out of it, came, and the linebacker come to get him, and he literally hurdled this guy. Flags are flying everywhere. I couldn't figure out what was going on. That was, Coach Coleman informed me that is, at the high school level, you cannot do it. It's considered unsportsmanlike. Backs them up 15 yards, but then they end up scoring on the next play. So, I mean, it was just pretty amazing to watch Troy Henderson, who was pretty much a non-factor at all in the first half, and all of a sudden, the second half, they started figuring out, okay, we're gonna spread you out. We're gonna use the mismatches in there. He finishes at 17 carries at 129 yards, 2 touchdowns, with the ceiling touchdown as he jumped over the pile, which is legal.
Right.
Jumped over the pile into the end zone late in the second half with 55
So you
seconds
dive,
left.
you just can't hurdle.
Yeah, I mean, that makes no sense whatsoever.
Right.
But such a well-played game from both sides.
And then back to the Centennial thing again. Now he had to have an offensive line in front of him doing it. He had to have LeBreche and Leon and all those guys doing their job. Rudolph in the wide receiver and the running back position. But then Caden Dreyer comes out, second week starting. He has 3 touchdowns in this game. So in the last 2 games he played in the playoffs against possibly the best 2 teams in 5A. Obviously, they're up there with him, Centennial and Independence. He has 5 total touchdowns, and spreading them out. And you got a quarterback who can run and throw. It's tough to defend, and we've talked about how underrated this Independence defense is, but how good they are. That's just tough to do, man. When you got a guy who can sit back there and beat you with his arm and his feet, it's tough to defend, and you saw that in the first half. Really, like you said, for 3.5 quarters for Brentwood.
Coach Crawford did a remarkable job of really pacing this game. I mean, we're looking at trying to keep this thing below 2 possessions per quarter, if you could. Now, if you don't get first downs, that bites you.
That's right.
He kept getting first down after first down after first down, and it was, the offensive line played really well. They'd hit LeBreche when they needed it at the time that you kept thinking that Dreyer was going to keep it. But it was just a back-and-forth chess match between Scott Blade, Ron Crawford, 2 of the best that we have, man. It was a fun, exciting game. Like I said, I hated to see that anybody go home. Usual cast of characters on the defensive side of Independence. Dempke, Dupree combined for 16 tackles. Huner for another 10. That's 26 tackles. They had to get 1 stop in the fourth quarter to get this thing back to win it, and they got it when they needed it. And good teams win. It's tough to think about the complacency that 18-year-old kids, 17-year-old kids could have in a 29-game win streak now. You've outscored your opponents 1,208 to 390. That's 818 plus points to the good. That's pretty impressive in this 29. But you got one game to go, guys. Get that number 30 back to back. We talked about it off the air. Not a whole lot of public schools ever have pulled off 30 in a row and back-to-back state championships.
I would say Maryville, Cleveland in the 90s, and I don't know of any other public schools. Brentwood Academy did it in the 90s. You can count on one hand the number of schools that have done it. You can't say Alcoa because they would always fall to Maryville in the regular season. So they're playing for a lot, man. This is rare territory.
All right, let's talk real quick on the other side. Farragut beat South Doyle. That's going to be their opponent. What are some keys for this win?
Well, if you listen to Coach Blade, they're probably the closest thing you'll find to a Williamson County team. They look a lot like a Brentwood or a Ravenwood or an Independence, but they're going to run spread. They're a little bit different than Independence. They got a 1,000-yard rusher, big back who they like to. He's going to get 20-something carries a game, but you'll see a lot of trips, a lot of doubles. Quarterback's a 3,000-yard passer. So I think they're a good offense. Defensively, a 3-4, play a hard cover 2 a lot. You and I talked off air. Coach Courtney's he's a defensive coach, really good coach. They sit in a cover 3, hard cover 2 against Independence and Scott Blade. It's going to be a long day on the turf at Tech, I assure you that.
Actually, it'll be a short one because it's going to be a running clock. That's what we hope anyway. So
yeah.
I hope he stays in that particular defense.
Right. And then if he loosens out of that, what you saw the other night, if you're going to play back, keep us in front of them, now you got Troy Henderson to deal with. So it's pick your poison. But I know one thing. That passing game is going to be – they haven't – if you look at Farragut's schedule, they've lost one game. He was either week 2 or week 3 to Oak Ridge, 25-20. Remember, that's where Scott Blade was. Don't think he doesn't have that film. That was a long time ago. But if you look at Farragut's playoff run and Independence's playoff run, it's not even close. They have not seen the passing game that they're getting ready to see on Friday.
Well, the game's going to be played on Friday at 7 o'clock. It's at Tennessee Tech University in Cookeville. There's going to be a viewing party at Buffalo Wings and Rings this Friday night at 7 o'clock. Part of the proceeds will be going to the championship rings, hopefully, but at least going to the Independence football team. So go out. If you're not going out to the football game all the way in Cookeville, do want to give a shout-out to Eli Katina, up for Mr. Football this week. Best of luck to him. And our deepest condolences and thoughts and prayers go out to the Jim Cheek family of Centennial High School football team as well in their loss this week. We want you to know that you, on behalf of the WCS Sports Conference and Tate myself, that you are in our thoughts and prayers. Thank you so much for joining us this week. We'll see you next week.